Hello, and welcome to the Blaise XPerience. If you're joining us, today we are back to talk some more Sea of Thieves, and today is going to be a very special episode where we actually get into the lore book in Sea of Thieves. We'll be talking a lot about the lore book, and we'll be breaking that down and kind of getting into all the facets of it, characters, some of the teases and hints in it. But also, we have a special guest today, and we're going to talk about their background a little bit. Without further ado, I'll introduce my guest. My guest is one of the deckhands and moderators on the Sea of Thieves forums. Please welcome to the podcast, KatTruewalker. How are you, Kat?
Hello, I'm very pleased to be here. Thanks very much for inviting me. I'm looking forward to talking about the lore book and everything else that's going to be discussed today.
Yeah, thank you for coming in. It's definitely great to have you here.
It's a real pleasure.
No, we definitely appreciate it, and hopefully the listeners will enjoy this.
I hope so. I'm sure they will.
I hope so. Well, yeah, I figure we can kind of get into how long you've sort of followed the game. So if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yes, yeah. Well, I've followed the game since 2015. And I suppose there's a little bit of a story that sort of goes with that. I used to play a game called Pirates of the Caribbean Online, which was a Disney game. And it was an enjoyable game. I had a lot of good times on it. And it's the only other game that I knew at the time that you could sail a ship with a crew of friends. And Disney closed it in 2013. And we the community sort of stuck together, and we got together and we were on Facebook and we were sort of still chatting and looking for other games. And I think I saw the first the concept trailer for Sea of Thieves. It must have been at E3 in 2015. I sort of looked at that and I thought, wow, I thought this is it. This could be the next pirate game, for all of us to get back on.
Right, definitely.
Yeah, and that was it. So there was just that trailer, and then there was nothing. There's no other news, nothing at all. Until I think I found the Reddit first of all. So I signed up for the Reddit. It's probably about 6 months, 8 months later. Might even have been sort of 2016. I can't remember quite. But so I sort of joined the Reddit, and we sort of got into chatting there. But little dribs and drabs of information came out, and then I found the forums, and I sort of joined in there and was sort of quite vocal because I like pirates and I'm interested in history. And I not only that, but the whole sort of I don't know, the ethos of the company. I mean, I've never played Rare games before. I've always been a PC gamer. Never heard of Rare. I knew Microsoft, obviously, and I liked what I read, and I liked what I heard from the company, and I was excited about the game and the potential for it, and the people, the community. Then a great bunch of people, some really sort of mad conversations going on, and sort of speculation and wishes and hopes, and just a really pleasant place to spend your time, the forums in those days. So, so I stuck around basically and got to know people and chatted and asked questions and put forward ideas, and that was that really. So then I was asked to be a deckhand.
Yeah, no, it definitely sounds great. And I mean, I think you kind of touched on it a little bit, but it sounds like what sort of drew you to Sea of Thieves was you kind of had like a void of not having that pirate game anymore when the Disney game closed, and that you kind of like pirates. So is that kind of what drew you to it?
Yes. Well, yeah, yes and no. I mean, I grew up, in a family who sort of spent a lot of time sailing and grew up with sort of sea stories, and I've always had a fondness for history. Sort of Tudor history. So, that's always been a big part of my life. When my children were younger, we watched the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and they were the ones who actually found the game Pirates of the Caribbean Online. And I used to hear them round the house. they were sort of an age, they were yelling to each other from room to room, don't do that, fire on that ship over there,
Right.
come on, we're gonna, and I thought, well, this sounds quite good. So I thought, right, I'd like to get in on that. So I did, I made a character, and I met some really great people. It was a really sort of quite close-knit community. So you'd be running around this quite small world, and you'd see names you recognised, and guilds that you'd recognise, and you'd sail with people, and you'd sort of get chatting, and I met some really, really good friends. And I when they closed it, we were devastated, because we didn't get a lot of notice that they were going to close the game, and it was closed on Talk Like a Pirate Day, ironically.
Well, that's really unfortunate.
Yeah, that's a nice one. Nice one, Disney. So it's like we were sort of grieving, and there was, amongst the community, people were saying, like, okay, we need to sort of rejuvenate this game. We're going to rebuild it and release it, and they have got a remake of it, a fan-made version called The Legends of Pirates Online. But a lot of the community are still there playing it, but a good portion of them have moved on now. And I go back now and again and play it. But Sea of Thieves is at another level altogether.
Right.
You'd have to sort of have a look at some of the old videos to realise. But that water, what can I say?
Yeah, the water's amazing. Yeah.
The water, the feel of the ship, the sound of the ship, the attention to detail.
Even the sky and the lighting is amazing too.
That's right. The sky, the aurora borealis, the fact that you can sort of walk about the islands and the plants move. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And having sailed in real life, a fair bit, it's pretty close. The feeling when you're on the deck of that galleon and you're watching the water, it's just so immersive. You're just there immediately in the world with Sea of Thieves. It's fantastic. So anything else sort of pales by comparison, sadly.
No, definitely. And I mean, you can just kind of get sucked in sometimes, because I know there's times where I'm sailing and I'm just kind of admiring the landscape before me, and I'm admiring the water and stuff, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh shoot, there's a rock in front of me. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, it's a bit of a problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
So drive right up the side of the rocks, but yes,
you do get sucked in like that, though. Yeah,
you do. Yeah, and you can see from like the screenshots people have taken, the sunsets, and it's like when you get the sunset, there's even down to the flash of green at the final moment when the sun sets. And obviously that's a part of the Caribbean thing, but also that's a real life thing. But for somebody at Rare to say, well, look, the sun's setting, we've got to have that flash of green when it goes down. It's just one example of that attention to detail, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I love everything about the way they designed this world. I mean, this world is amazing. So
yes. Yeah, it really
even the
is.
different regions are really cool. You have the Ancient Isles, which is totally different from like Shores of Plenty. So I love how there's different regions like that too.
That's right, quite distinctive, aren't they? And although between the Ancient Isles and the Shores of Plenty, it's quite a subtle difference. So I sort of, because I'm English, I sort of think the Ancient Isles is a bit more like the North Sea. I suppose it's supposed to be like the Atlantic, and then the Shores of Plenty are a bit more like the Caribbean, or how you'd imagine the Caribbean to be. So, but it when you've been sailing around the wilds for some time, to come out of that and go to Smuggler's Bay and to be in that sort of beautiful Caribbean sunshine with the azure sea there is fantastic, isn't it? It's a great feeling when you actually get there, out of that. So, yeah. So,
No, definitely.
So all of that. Yeah.
I think there's so much potential too to make, more regions and things in the future. I mean, I know personally one region I'd love to see in the future is like sort of a snowy or ice region where it's cold.
Yes. And so again, that's one of the things people have mentioned. They've talked about maybe more oriental type regions. So again, we know there were pirates out in the China Sea, and definitely in Asia around India, the Indian Ocean. in the 18th century. So it's not too far-fetched to think that, well, maybe we might get something with an Oriental flavour or Asian flavour sort of drawn in, joining the world we have.
Yeah, definitely. I think some of the teaser art, like in the art book, kind of suggests that they could go that route eventually.
Yes. And the art book's sort of quite amazing because
It is.
you can. It's quite easy to, you sit on you read the forums and you read the articles, and they are really only a snapshot of what people are talking about. But the art book really gives you an insight into all the different ideas that the designers have explored with Sea of Thieves. I mean, it's funny, I took it to work today, and I was looking at some of the pages with the ship designs on, and they've got the most fantastical ships that they've looked at, that they've thought of. Ships with balloons, ships with sort of like massive tiers of sails, and like you say, the Asian ideas and all the different influences. So, they have really thought about it very carefully, the design and what fits with this game.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it unique too, is they put so much thought into it and actually made this world one that can last for years.
Yes, and it's we've got the world. It's a fantastic foundation, and the potential is still there to add more different layers, expand it, anything you like, really. I think
Exactly. But you did mention a little bit earlier that kind of you joined the forums and then eventually became a deckhand. So do you want to describe like how that process went about? Like how long were you on the forums before you actually got that?
Yeah, I can do. I was, and it wasn't just me, obviously.
Right, definitely.
I'd been on the forums for about sort of 6 months, I suppose. I can't remember the exact date, but and there was a big group of sort of regulars. We'd sort of chat to people, we'd try to help people out, and we just talk. And the guy who was in charge of looking after the forums at the time, Cameron, we used to call him Optical Matrix, he was known as on the forums. He sort of dropped me a chat message one day and said, how'd you like to be to help with moderating the forums? I was sort of taking care of the forums. I don't think he sort of officially called it moderating at the time, but
right.
I said, yeah, I'll give it a go. And I was quite surprised. I was surprised to be asked, I think, very sort of honoured. And I thought I'd never done anything like that before. I'm sort of been quite active on the Pirates of the Caribbean forums, but nothing much else. And then there was Runic and Jedi and the rest. Falcon was invited, and sort of 5 of us initially. And yeah, we sort of started looking after the forums. I mean, there wasn't really a huge amount of moderating sort of to do, but we had some ideas and tried to get it organised so it was easy to find things, and help new people out who came along, and it sort of the role sort of grew. So we expanded, so we added more deckhands to the list as well, Liz and Dill, and it's been a really interesting role, and really sort of quite satisfying to be able to sort of help out and follow the story as it's grown over time, because the community now is absolutely massive.
It is, for sure.
Lots bigger than it was, when we first started. Definitely
Which
huge.
you kind of mentioned that like the role grew and stuff. I mean, when you first took the position, did you kind of feel any different at the time, or like did you really understand what the role was going to balloon to as it is now?
I had no clue.
That's kind of a figure,
to be honest, I had, having
right.
not done anything like this before, but seeing moderators in action, because I being a PC player, I'm on Steam, and I've been on Steam forums, and I've seen what the forums are like there now, sort of quite sort of salty and quite. And I think as a team of deckhands, we always wanted to be quite involved with the community, and because we didn't stop just because we'd taken on this role of sort of deckhands, didn't mean we stopped having ideas about the game, things we'd like to see, or and didn't want to stop contributing. So we were very, very hands-on in the community, to start with. But no, I think the biggest shock, I think, when they started the Insider program, first of all, I think that drew in a lot of people. So extra people on the forums, there were new people. So they needed to sort of find their way around and learn the etiquette, I suppose. Because we'd always agreed that we wanted the forum to be, a welcoming, friendly place, and with smaller numbers and sort of people sort of sharing that ethos, it was fairly it's quite easy to maintain that. But as it grows, you get people from different places coming in, then different personalities, and it does change, but we still always had that. I think that's probably why the rules are quite strict, I suppose, on the forums. But the huge numbers of people we've got in the community now is a big change. Yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah, it definitely seems to have grown a lot since early days. So
yes,
and
yeah,
it keeps growing as the time goes on.
That's right. Yes, and I think from the last podcast, I think that Rare did. They were saying at the beginning there they were sort of blown away by the, I think it was about 2 million players in the first 2 weeks after release. I think was one of the figures that they quoted on that. I mean,
which is just insane. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's absolutely mind blowing, isn't it? So many people. I mean, it's fantastic to see, but to have to sort of scale everything up to, to sort of help these people out and direct them and answer questions, and all of that is hard work. Yeah, it's hard work.
but as you said it was kind of rewarding to you too. So like, what do you kind of like about the role? I mean, it sounded like you like sort of helping people.
Yeah, I do like helping people. It's one of it's one of the things. That's sort of person I am. I think I'm a teacher,
Right.
so I sort of work with special needs children. But I do like helping people. I like to see. I really enjoy the discussions, the enthusiasm. The people who are sort of motivated, who reading the stories when people have had a fantastic session, and they come and share the story. Something daft they've done, the little videos where people have the guy who, I think one of the ones, the guy who shot himself out of the cannon managed to get through the opening at the top of the cave on Cannon Cove. I thought, flipping heck, how on earth do you do that? There was the girl.
That's crazy, yeah.
Yeah, there was the lady who sort of managed to shoot herself right into the doorway of the tavern on Ancient Spires, I think it was. It's just amazing things. So all of that, and meeting all the different people, from all over the place, different age groups, the wide range of sort of ages we've got, of people on the forums, the backgrounds, the countries they've come from, and that enthusiasm for being a pirate, for playing it up, in a pirate game. It's just great to be a part of. I think so. Yeah. So that's what I do enjoy about it very much.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it's very rewarding for.
Yeah.
But I know, like, I think a lot of players kind of get confused at times when they direct criticism because they kind of feel like the deckhands like yourself are sort of directly in the know of everything that's going on with the game, which I don't know if you can kind of speak to, like, I guess the best way to put it is, like, how much is actually shared with you guys? Like, you obviously don't know the entire future of the game, so.
No, we don't. We didn't.
Right.
Rare have this saying, and they've had this all the way along, which they like to show and not tell.
Right, which I think is a good way to put it.
They don't tell us anything. Sadly, we don't have. I wish I had access. And they are very good at keeping things close to their chest. And And I think the reason they do that is because, ideas change, sort of things don't fit in quite, or they think of something better, or they don't want to do this right now, they'll do it later on. And if you're out there and you say, right, okay, within the next month, we're going to have this, this, and this. And then for whatever reason, if you don't stick to that, then obviously people are going to lose trust in you, aren't they? They're going to think, well, you promised this and it's not
Right.
there. What are you playing at? So I think that they've decided that they will show us. It's like the picture of the new cosmetics, right? So we've seen those. We can see them in the picture. They're somewhere. They're coming. They're on their way. And much to the frustration of all the deckhands, we don't we don't get very much inside knowledge, if any at all. So that's a bit disappointing for everybody to hear, I suppose. But yeah, no. So
Well, it's probably good in the sense, though, that, like, I don't know if you personally had this, but I know some of the deckhands have kind of been sort of attacked as if they were employees about, like, negative comments. So,
yes,
I mean,
yeah.
so.
I mean, so I suppose we're in a little bit of a difficult position because we're volunteers. Okay, we all have day
Right, exactly.
jobs. Yeah, we don't get paid for this. Um, we do it because we love Rare. We love the game. We love the potential it's got, and we love playing it. But we're in between, so we're sort of part of the community still because we have questions. I mean, Jedi's has a post on the forum of things he would like to see, or we would like to see brought into the game at some point. So we're still at the point where we will speculate. I mean, when they teased, well, okay, well, what about things like jewelry? What about things like skirts that are separate from dresses? And what about corsets? And, especially Liz and I, when we get together, being, um, those sorts of things. There are still things that we ask for that we would like to see in the game. So we're very much part of the community still from that point of view. But we do have, obviously, this sort of closer relationship with Rare, which is very special. We talk to them. Sort of Dee is fantastic. I mean, they really are a very great bunch of people. I can't sort of emphasize that enough. They are genuine, they're motivated, they're enthusiastic, and very human people. When the community is disappointed, that they feel it, and we see that side which perhaps members of the community, the forum, whatever, they don't see that. But then
Right.
we're also in a privileged position because things that the community are concerned about, things that pop up, things that are being discussed, we can pass on to Rare. We can say, well, look, did you know they're very concerned about being raided when you finish the skull fort, or people are very concerned about being spawn camped, or being thrown in the brig, or probably less major things than that, but there are issues that we can bring to Rare in discussions and sort of make them aware of, which is the good part of our role, I think. So,
Right, you're kind of like an extra set of eyes that, like, you can kind of let them know,
yes,
okay, this is going on over here. So,
yes. So we don't. I mean, because we don't want to be seen as disciplinarians, because that isn't what our role is. We're sort of we're go-betweens, I suppose. We want the community to be sort of fairly civil, constructive discussions and all that, and we try and encourage that. And we want to see the ideas. We want people to feel able to come to the forums and post ideas, however wild and wonderful they are. We don't like to see sort of people being labeled as this sort of thing or that sort of thing, or to be insulted or to be diminished in any way, because that's not what the forums are all about. But then we're also I suppose, spokespeople for the forums. You could say, in that we can pass things on and help to sort of move ideas forwards and let Rare know what the community is interested in. Because that's another thing about it, isn't it? Rare have always said that they were going to develop the game alongside the community, sort of, which is probably why the forums opened sort of so early in 2016, I think, so that they could do that. And they had the insider program, the alpha testing, the beta tests that went on for a long time, the pioneers program. It's bringing the community along with the development of the game, and they're still listening. I know it's people say they're not, or there's been a lot of criticisms, but it's not No Man's Sky, and Rare do listen and they hear what's being said. So
right, and from where I'm sitting, I think they've definitely shown that. I mean, especially say just take the content roadmap. People wanted more content, and then they drop this big content roadmap. So they are definitely listening.
Yes, yeah. And I mean, nothing ever happens. I mean, one of the things I have learned, I think, from all of this is that the game's development is a slow, long process, and
Right.
things don't get done immediately. They don't get done straight. It's not just a case of, you go over here and you write a bit of code and you flip a switch and everything's sort of fixed. Because it's all about the different systems, isn't it? And one thing depends on something else, and another group of people over there, and if they do this, does it affect that? And it's a complicated thing, but
right, yeah,
the community is heard. That's the main important thing.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like you were saying, I don't know a lot about the technical side of it, but I definitely don't think it's where you can just go over here, press a button, and then it's fixed. I mean, so
no,
it's definitely not that.
We'd like it to be that sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
But sadly, no. No, it's not.
But you did sort of mention one of the other deckhands had a thread about like things they wanted to see in game. What's sort of one of the things you would like to see in game that's not in there right now?
I would like fishing to be in game. It's not a huge thing, is it? I would like fishing to be in game, because I'll tell you where. Ever since we noticed that around the world there are little stools, aren't there, on random rocks. I'm thinking of Crescent Isle here in particular. On I think it's the southern side. There's a bare piece of rock. There's a little stool. There's a crate behind it that's empty and with a bit of rope in it or whatever. And that is a perfect fishing spot,
Interesting. I didn't even see that before.
Have you not noticed? There's quite a few of these all around, dotted around us. It might be Smuggler's Bay, actually. No, I'm sure it's Crescent Isle. And it's just, again, it's one of these sort of little quality of life things that you're sailing around in your ship, and it would be nice to be able to stop off at some place and just throw your fishing line over the side of the boat and do a bit of fishing, just sort of chill out and catch some fish, sell them to the merchant, or cook them on the stove, or and things that like that encourage you to sort of linger. So I don't know about you, but when you play the game, but quite often when I jump in, it's okay. We've got a quest. We've got to put this down. We've got to head over here, and you're off. And once you're on that sort of trail of a voyage doing a quest, it's difficult to stop and slow down and just enjoy the world sometimes,
No, I agree. And I think that's why I didn't even know about what you just mentioned, because I never stopped long enough to actually notice this like little stool that was sitting there. You know what I mean?
No, I know. And I think and I think you're not alone. I think a lot of people similarly, and I don't know why. I don't know what the reason is, but there's no need to, perhaps, or because they get on this trail of achievements and they want to level up, they want to get sort of the pirate legends. But there are lots of little things on the islands that if you can take time and you just sort of wander about, there's paintings, there's strange objects in the caves, there's bits where you can dive down and find little caverns under the water, and um, just to be able to sort of chill out, relax, do that, catch a few fish, maybe read a book or two, sat on the beach. Obviously someone's going to come
Right.
along and sink you if they see you, but you could scuttle your ship and sit on the beach and read books. Just a nice change of pace. I think it'd be a nice sort of change of pace.
Yeah, and I feel like a fishing trading company probably isn't the worst if I had to guess, because there's also, which I'm sure you've seen, there's been artwork that has actually shown rowboats. So it feels like there's going to be something like that where you can actually just go on a rowboat fish.
Yes, yeah, there has been, hasn't there? Even from that first, the first images of the game we saw, viewing the ship being attacked by the Kraken. They're in a rowboat, aren't they? Sort of
Right,
looking
exactly.
out to sea, and then these rowboats are all over the islands, and they've propped up, and some of them are broken, but some of them are in sort of fairly good condition. So if they're there, why can't we have some?
Right.
And I wish I knew whether we're going to or not. But like you say, it suggests that at some point we might, see a small rowboat or something. But yeah, so yeah, fishing I think is probably the thing I would choose. Maybe dice, a bit of gambling in the taverns. That's a little bit more complicated, I think.
Yeah, that sounds fun too, play some cards or
Yeah.
whatever. So,
Yes, yeah, or a dartboard or
right.
shove halfpenny, something, some old tavern games. I think that. In fact, because in the book it does describe, doesn't it, quite a few. Um,
Right.
when we get to that later on, card games and such. But
Well, it
yeah,
also makes for funny moments too, where like, say you're with a friend playing darts, and then someone shows up and just shoots you in the back. It's like, oh man, I was going to win the game of darts.
I guess it's probably about 40% of the community would not be amused at that. I think, yeah, not good. Or arm
Probably,
wrestling, you lose your arm
right.
wrestle and the guy gets the pistol out and shoots you. Yeah, great. But yeah, all that's sort of potential for things like that, which it just adds to the life of a pirate in the world, doesn't it?
Definitely. Which I can't wait to see, what comes next. I mean, I know when we get into it a little bit afterwards, there's some possible new trading companies that we'll talk about that came in the lore book, so we'll get into those too.
Yes. Yes, there are. Yes. Interesting things.
But before we actually get into the lore book, do you have anything else that you want to like add about, I guess, your role or kind of how you came about this and your relationship with Rare?
Um, no, no, other than that, I feel extremely privileged to sort of be in the position I am now, to be able to do this and be involved with not only the game but the people, the company, the community. I'm just an ordinary sort of person who jumped into the forum and was quite passionate about what I saw there, and um, sort of very lucky to be asked to sort of take on a greater role, greater involvement with it. And I learn something new every day. I feel really very privileged to sort of be a part of it all. Um, it's a great experience. I mean, I'm not young. I'm not a YouTuber or a streamer or anything like that, or
Right.
even famous on social media. But yeah, no, it's been amazing. It's been, yeah. I'm glad I said yes. Is what I could say.
Well, I'm glad you said yes too. I mean, you seemed like a great presence in the forums, and you've been fun to get to know in the time I've got to know you. So
Thank you.
you're
Kind of you to
welcome.
say so.
But I guess we can kind of get into the lore book. But before we do, I just want to mention this for listeners. This is sort of your spoiler warning. If you are one of those people that doesn't like to be spoiled about things, you might want to just, stop the podcast here, go read the lore book, and then come back, because we will be talking about a lot of spoilers that are in the lore book. So if you're spoiler averse, definitely, jump out here and then come back basically when you're done reading the book. But if you are going to jump out here, then you can always contact the podcast at the Blaise XPerience on Twitter. You can also contact us, the Blaise XPerience at gmail.com, if you want to email us. So those are the ways you can give us feedback. But if you're jumping out here, then, thank you for listening so far, and we will see you when you come back for the lore book part. But now we can kind of get into the lore book. So basically, the lore book is sort of split into two parts. And basically, there's the first part that is sort of Captain Flameheart's adventures, and the second part is sort of Captain Bell's adventures. So we'll go into some of Captain Flameheart's adventures first. So do you want to sort of describe who Captain Flameheart is as a character?
Captain Flameheart, yes. Yes. Well, he describes himself, doesn't he? He says he's a scholar. And he seems to, he talks about he's quite wealthy. He's obviously got plenty of money. He's studied literature, languages, fine art, mathematics, and philosophy, thanks to his father. He does mention he's adopted, which I thought was interesting, and that he wants to go to sea and be a pirate, basically. He sort of feels an unfulfilled part of him.
Yeah, basically he mentioned that his father, who is sort of, I guess we'll refer to him as Flameheart the First.
Mm-hmm.
Flameheart the First is his father, and he made a name for himself, and he was sort of like a pirate legend who was really feared. And kind of, as you said, Flameheart the Second, he basically is a scholar that wants to be like his dad, but he wasn't really, I guess, as you said, he was adopted, so it wasn't essentially his dad in the first place. His real father, he doesn't really know anything about, and I don't know if in any future lore that we'll ever find out what happened to his real father, but basically all we're told is that his father, Flameheart the First, basically just says that it's not something you need to know about, and that's pretty much it.
Yes, yeah. I'm sort of reading a little bit here. It's interesting, though, that his father is in the real world, if you like, where Flameheart is before he sort of moves to Sea of Thieves, before he sails to Sea of Thieves.
Right.
But then his father also has a history in the Sea of Thieves, doesn't he? He has a place in the Sea of Thieves. So he's actually been and come back, and sort of spends nights telling his son all the tales and stories of the adventures he's had, doesn't he?
Yeah, and basically from these tales, it really kind of invigorates his curiosity, and he kind of wants to learn more. So basically, I would describe him as someone that's really knowledgeable about pirate culture, but he's not actually experienced. He doesn't have that real world pirate experience, but he has
No.
the knowledge of it from his father.
Yes, so it's like, in a lot of ways he sort of comes across as quite naive, doesn't he? Because
Right.
he has this learning, this knowledge. He's a strong swimmer. He's an adept swordsman. He can do navigation, but sort of going down to the docks when he's got to buy his ship, he doesn't really know how to conduct himself, or how to go about it particularly, or how even to sort of relate to these sort of pirates sort of down at the dock in a way that they would feel comfortable talking to him about their own sort of stories and legends. So that's quite interesting. So he's obviously inspired. I like this line they've got here. He says, "I have arranged to vanish over the horizon to retrieve myself." And that sort of reminded me very sort of strongly of sort of Jack Sparrow and the Pirate of the Caribbean. And I think he wrote a note say, I can't remember what it said now, but something very similar in one of the Pirate of the Caribbean movies, about retrieving himself. And yeah, he's got this burning desire to go and taste that world, or be a part of that world, and fulfill his inner pirate. so to speak.
Right, yeah. I mean, kind of as you were describing, it seems like he knows about the pirates, but he doesn't know how to fit in with them because, like, he goes to the bar and, tries to talk with the pirates, like, hey, can you tell me your story? Like, I want to be a pirate like you kind of thing, pretty much. And no one will really
Yes.
talk to him because they don't trust him. So,
No, I suppose in a way, I mean, sort of thinking about it now, you can almost sort of draw a parallel between sort of Flameheart and a new player, couldn't you, in a way? Because
that is
um,
true, actually, yeah.
yeah, people who've never there's never been a pirate game like this to play before in the first place. But we're all knowledgeable. We've all got experience of other games. And we have also got in our minds this, I suppose, a stereotype of what pirates are, what pirates are like, how they lived, what they did, how they talked, what their stories were. But we don't actually know, and that's true not only from a literature point of view, but from a historical point of view, because there isn't very much first-hand evidence of pirate life, on the seas. So a lot of what we know nowadays is taken from Stevenson and Treasure Island and Pirates of Penzance and Peter Pan, Captain Hook. It's been sort of romanticized, if you like. And yeah, so I was thinking about it. He strikes me very much like that. He has this vision, this sort of stereotype of what pirates are like, or even more what he's seen, but he doesn't yet sort of know or understand what being a pirate actually is.
Right. No, I think it's really a great parallel you made too with like a new player in Sea of Thieves the game as well, because say there's really experienced pirates and a new player jumped into their crew, they might be using lingo that the new player wouldn't understand. Like say they say,
Mm.
okay, let's make an anchor turn. That new player probably wouldn't even know what that means. So if they don't
No,
know what that means, then they're not really going to fit in as well with that culture yet.
that's right. And there are plenty of people who've never been on a boat, never might never have seen the sea, for instance.
Right.
Um, if you're going to start saying, well, port, starboard, mainmast, the sails, the bowsprit, the stern, they're all sort of quite technical terms, aren't they? And sort of special
Right.
names for different parts of the ship. And, being able to read a compass, being able to navigate, being able to read a map, those are all, skills that we take for granted, I suppose, if we know how to use them. But not everybody has that sort of experience or learning, and coming to the game must be quite difficult, I think, if that's your first. I mean, I remember sort of reading on the forum there were reports of people feeling seasick. They'd never sailed, but the motion of the ship and the sea and everything
Right.
was realistic enough to give them a feeling of
Which is
motion
crazy. That was that
sickness.
realistic. Yeah.
Yes, well, yeah, I don't know. It's very uppy downy if you're standing on the bowsprit, sometimes. And you can imagine that. But yes, so it could well be quite mind-boggling, I think.
No, yeah, and I think that's a great parallel you made because that's kind of how Flameheart is. Like
Yeah,
he knows his own personal experiences with what he believes pirates to be, but he doesn't actually know how to fit in with them. He doesn't know their terms. He doesn't know, I guess, how they conduct business with each other. So,
that's right. I
in
mean, yes, I mean,
right,
he comes from, or he's grown up in a society that most pirates rejected, didn't they? Because it didn't
right,
work for them in sort of real life. That society was, if you were rich and you were educated, then you were okay. But if you were some poorly paid sailor who's just been chucked out the navy because you weren't needed anymore, it was, another story. And pirates, sort of, historical pirates, did develop their own, their own way of doing things, their own culture, their own code of conduct, their own um, rules, um, for living, if you like, and separate from what they'd come from. the society that they'd come from. So yeah, there's that as well.
Right. No, I think Flameheart just he thinks he's going to be like this great pirate legend like his dad, but he doesn't actually know how to get there. So he's just looking for like, hey, can you show me how to get there? Can you kind of help me here? And
Yes.
no one really wants to take him under their wing because they kind of feel like he's not really in their culture. He's not indoctrinated into it.
Oh, he's a bit of a noob, isn't he?
Yeah,
really,
definitely.
I think is what they think. And what sort of accentuates that is the little sort of sentences that you start to see in the book, the red text and the blue text from Belle and Nura. They call him Faintheart, don't they? Because they're not, so at this point they're not taking him very seriously.
No, yeah, they call him Flameheart for sure, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So they sort of realise that, don't they, I think?
Which I guess that's a good point to kind of mention how that starts out with them, because basically at the start, we learn more about them later, but Belle and Nura at the start of the book, they kind of seem almost like hecklers for Captain Flameheart, because in the margins you'll see like, oh wow, you really did that, Faintheart? Or like, some little comments that seem like they're kind of poking fun at him.
Yes, yeah, oh, very totally. And when I first sort of opened the book, it was quite confusing. I think
it was for me, yes.
Yeah, I must have flown straight past the like frontispiece with the recorded and compiled by Captain Flameheart bit and sort of jumped straight into the book. But when I couldn't quite figure out who are they, first of all, and why are they commenting. So I sort of made, but knowing, having read the book now and knowing who they are, it's a nice, what's the word? That's probably a technical word. Segue, is it, between the two halves of the stories, to have their comments and the contrast as well, their sort of attitudes about things that Flameheart is saying.
But I think that's a nice way they did it too, because it's very confusing when you read it that way at first. But once you get to the end of the book, it comes full circle how they did it that way. So
yes,
it really makes sense why they were commenting like that after they already had their journeys.
Absolutely, yes. And it's good to go back then, isn't it? And then sort of read that
Definitely, yes.
sort of first half again, then it all sort of fits in and makes absolute sense. Yeah, no, very good.
But kind of going along Flameheart's story a little bit, we mentioned how no one really wanted to help him out or actually talk to him about the pirate life. It isn't until he basically uses one of his father's old coins that is presumed to be coming from the ancient isles. He shows this to a man named Isidro, and that's basically the first thing that gets him a ticket into the world. So
yes, I mean, he get a little bit, but just before that, before the ancient coin, but he's talking about no one would acknowledge the Sea of Thieves. I mean, obviously his intention is to go to the Sea of Thieves. Says, while no one I spoke to would acknowledge the Sea of Thieves by name, a few did admit that they knew of young apprentices who'd brazenly undertaken the voyage I planned for myself. So, yes, until he's actually sort of waved this coin about, they're not going to talk to him. It's a secretive, sort of private. It's a bit like...
Right, and they kind of feel like, why would we share our secrets with you? You're just some scholar boy that, doesn't know anything. So that's kind of how they're looking at it, yeah.
That's right, yeah. I think the justification is that they don't want the Navy or bigger trading companies or businesses or privateers even to find their way to the Sea of Thieves. It's a place where they can be, live in freedom.
Right, because it's kind of like their thing. It's their culture that no one else really knows about. So
yeah. So this ancient coin, is when it's mentioned, is quite interesting as well.
But yeah, basically from that ancient coin, he shows it to a man named Isidro, and then this Isidro, he actually procures him a ship and a crew, and basically on his crew is himself, Isidro, Rosie, who's the quartermaster of the ship, and Tomaz, who is like, I guess, a very young deckhand. I kind of imagined him like maybe 14 or 15. That's kind of how I imagined him. So
yes, yeah, teenager, I should think.
Right. Do you have anything to particularly say about those characters? I mean, we never really learn a ton about their background, but they seem like they're at least Isidro seems like he's very knowledgeable about the Sea of Thieves. He really knows how to get around and what to do with it. But Rosie and Tamaz, we never really find out too much about their character, I would say.
No, I think it's not until they sort of talk about the cat. Is it the ship's cat later on?
Right, Trouble. The name of the cat,
You're
yes.
Trouble, yes, and there's a little bit more there about the various characters, because the cat likes to sleep on Isidro's head, I think. And is it Rosie who hates the cat? Rosie really doesn't like the cat because of all the superstitions associated with cats on board ship. But Isidro is the one who sort of buys the boat, doesn't he?
Yes.
And employs the crew and introduces Flameheart as captain. I think when they first get aboard.
Yes, and basically that coin is essentially what gave him like sort of the respect amongst the crew, because they figure if he has this coin, he at least, has enough connection with the Sea of Thieves that he can have a respect temporarily.
Yes. Does it say somewhere that it's the currency in Sea of Thieves? I think it does, doesn't it? Yeah, these coins were a currency in the Sea of Thieves.
It basically...
yeah.
Yeah, it just says it was a currency, but it seems like it was like a long time ago, so it seems like a currency that might have,
yes,
I guess, grown weaker at this point, like, or not, how should I put it? I guess a currency that kind of like went out of style that still can be found, but it's rare enough that if someone has this, then they have a deep enough connection that they have some respect.
Exactly,
That's
yes.
kind of how it seems to me.
Yes, so it gives him a bit of credence, doesn't it? That he has reason to be asking about it. Yeah. So Flameheart doesn't really know what to do with himself, does he? Once he's captain of this ship, he doesn't. I think the next bit is it's useful because it's describing the ship and the captain's cabin, not only for Flameheart but also for anybody else, who's going to play the game, who's a new player. If you need to know about the galleons in Sea of Thieves, you can sort of read about them here. It tells you a lot of the information about it. There are some differences.
Yeah, I mean, basically, a lot of the beginning of the book is just kind of going through things like that. It's going through the galleon. Yeah. It goes through like the foliage of the world, maybe some of the food in the world. It goes through little things like that he wouldn't have known himself because he just didn't really have the real world experience. So you're kind of learning along with him how he learned about
That's
those
right,
things.
yes. And the fact that he was horribly seasick for days, wasn't he, when they set sail?
Yes.
The poor guy. I almost felt quite sorry for him. For a little bit.
But basically, he goes from that, essentially, for the most part, it goes right into where they actually enter the Sea of Thieves, and he's actually asleep for this part of the journey, so he doesn't actually know how they crossed into there. But basically how it's described is, in order to get into the Sea of Thieves, you have to know like sort of like the exact coordinates, and Isidro knew how to get there. But basically Flameheart wakes up and they're already in there, and he's kind of, I guess I'd say, bummed out about missing that. So
yes, I mean, there's a lovely phrase in there about it being like a fold in the map. The Sea of Thieves appears to be lost in the crease of a map. One must know that it is there to find it, which is a lot like a lot of mythical islands, isn't it? Stories and legends that we have about Avalon and other mythical islands off the coasts of Ireland, and there must be plenty of different parts of the world, similar sorts of things. But they, sometimes they appear at certain times of year, or you have to sail a certain way to get to them. But yeah, so I really do like that. I wonder if they didn't describe what the crossing was like because at the time the book was written, perhaps Rare might not have firmed up what the edge of the world was like. I don't know.
Yeah, they might not have. I mean, it sounds like basically they kind of tied it into this because it's described as the Devil's Shroud, and essentially it's like a giant cloud of mist, what it sounds like, which we know in our version of the game, it's not really mist, but it is like a deep red sea, and there's like really ominous music playing. So maybe they changed that just in the actual game world, because maybe the mist was too hard to actually do, since if there's a bunch of mist, you can't really see to get yourself out of there. So maybe they didn't want to do that aspect. But in the book, it's basically described as like mist that if you go through it, it'll swallow your ship and just destroy it, kind of like the edge of the world does in ours.
Yeah. And Bell says, at the bottom of the page where after he's described the crossing, lucky I hear most ships don't make the crossing in one piece, which sort of goes to show that it is quite a treacherous sort of bit of water to sail across. I think I remember writing a bit of something for the forums. I think it was how I arrived in Sea of Thieves, before I'd even read the book. And it was something similar, so overnight you sort of, I don't know if I wrote there was a storm, but it was about waking up in the morning to different stars in the sky. So a similar sort of thing. There's sort of a barrier, sort of a Bermuda Triangle effect, I suppose, that gets you across into the Sea of Thieves.
Right, yeah, because it kind of sounds like you only get there if you know about it, pretty much. But basically, they do get there, and then essentially he's in the Sea of Thieves, and pretty much the story kind of chronicles his first couple of days in the Sea of Thieves. As you said, he is seasick and things like that. It kind of talks about how he's getting used to it for the first few days. So the beginning of the journey is basically just about like him getting used to it. He talks about, outfitting his ship and the weapons, just a lot of like beginning stuff is what this first part of the story is.
Yeah, he ends up in an outpost, doesn't he? And wants to sort of restock the ship, and it's a lot about his experience walking around the outpost. I must say that there's one little bit where they talk about markets, and it's quite a bit busier in the book than it is in game at the moment. There's like stalls about and different sort of traders and sort of people walking about buying things, isn't there? He talks about jeweled rings and knickknacks and all the other things that he sees on the stalls and the trading companies. His first encounters with those, which is nice.
Right.
Something he talks about the gold hoarder.
Yeah, he basically talks about going to the outpost and those interactions.
Yes.
And it's kind of just the start of his journey, and then he goes into kind of his aspirations, sort of. He talks about those. He aspires to be like his father and kind of conduct himself in a way that will garner respect amongst people in that world, but unfortunately for him, he hasn't really earned that yet.
That's right. This is where he talks about going to the tavern, and the only way that you can fit in is late at night when you've had too much to drink and everyone's telling tales of all the adventures they've had. I think it's somewhere in this bit, I think. But yes, he's sort of starting to relax into the role a little bit, I suppose. I think Rosie's taking charge of restocking the ship and everything, but he's spends a lot of time describing everybody until that night.
Right.
He goes to sleep on the boat. And then he gets led off to, must have been one of the old souls, the Order of the Souls traders, presumably. The first mystery.
So yeah, basically, as you said, he kind of meets people at the outpost. First, he meets a gold hoarder, and the gold hoarder basically gives him a quest to find a chest for him. And he seems really excited about this at first because it's his first chance to make a name for himself and his first chance to go on a journey. But before he can actually do that, he meets the Order of Souls person, like you said. Well, it's never particularly said to be Order of Souls, but we kind of assume it to be Order of Souls. He meets an old woman that's kind of mysterious, and basically she gives him a quest to find some interesting object, and essentially at the end of that journal entry, he's like, okay, I have a choice to make. I can either go for the chest or I can go for this mysterious object. And he decides to go for the mysterious object.
Yes. Yeah, there's a couple of other interesting bits there because when you talk about the gold hoarders talk about the fact, well, you can't actually open the chest that I'm going to send you to find because it needs a suitable skeleton key, which only the gold hoarders possess. And then when he talks about the map with the old lady who's arranged a meeting in the middle of the night, he says he feels very drawn to the chest, to the quest, the idea of going to fetch this object that she's sending him off to. He talks about the ink flowing from her fingertips, doesn't he? So she definitely does sound like an old souls, Order of Souls representative. But yes, he decides, well, I think he's quite wealthy, doesn't need the money, does he? So he's going to go off with the mysterious adventure.
Yeah, I think he wants the adventure more because that's sort of along the lines of what he wanted to do. He wanted to be adventurous like his father and sort of prove himself. So it sounds like he really wants to prove himself more than the money, because he doesn't want the wealth. He wants sort of the respect more than the wealth.
That's right, yeah. The experience. This is where they have the cat. The cat
yes,
appears.
Trouble the Cat.
Trouble the Cat. Which I think is a nice sort of a departure from the Flameheart part of the story slightly. I mean, it's or like an insert, if you like. So it has its own chapter, and they do that. He does this quite a lot during the book. There's little interjections of information and interesting little snippets and just like by the by things. And the cat is a good way of sort of bringing in about the superstitions that sailors had, and because they really were a superstitious lot. But the cat's quite comical, and the actual sort of picture of the cat, the model of the cat there is it's full of character. It's a scarred black moggy sort of invites itself aboard and does whatever it likes, basically, including catching seagulls.
Right. No, yeah, definitely. And the cat is kind of a nuisance to Rosie, especially. And it said like that, like you said earlier, it sleeps on Isidro's head and it kind of scratches his head.
Yeah.
So the cat sounds like sort of a nuisance, but also it does say that it seems like it's sort of superstitious that you don't really want to get rid of the cat because they're seen as like good luck for the ship. So
definitely.
Yes, definitely. So that helps too. So it kind of helps out that way. But basically, after they talk about Trouble a little bit, we kind of go into their first battle and how that goes. Do you want to describe how their first battle went a little bit?
Yeah. Now this isn't their first battle, though, is it? This is where it sort of slants off again, and you have some of the tales of Sea of Thieves. So these, I'm not sure where this first one comes from, but the Mermaid's Fortune, the Serpent's Lie, and the Mad Monkey are names of ships in the game. And following that sort of first battle story, because his ship's called the Silver Blade, isn't it? He's still on the Silver Blade. And in that first battle section, they mention even the fabled grog males were spotted observing the battle. Though that stretches the credulity of this humble scholar.
Right.
And then following that, you've got a map of the world, but there are excerpts from stories that people have written on the forums. So these are real people's stories. So we've got Natsu, for instance, from the SS Troglodyte, who's written the story. You've got Captain Thugs Deluxe, who again is another community member whose story is in the book. So I think those are there as, I don't know, examples of the tavern stories, the tales that he was able to listen to while he was on the outpost that he's heard told. And then, yeah.
Right, which is really interesting too. I mean, reading through some of these tales, it's actually very helpful, I think, especially if you're a new player, because it goes through a lot of the strategies
yes. I mean, there
like these fictional captains would employ to actually win their situations.
And they sort of go out, they have a night sailing, they come back and they post these stories for everybody to read, and they're really, really fantastical adventures. And like you say, using some of the techniques and strategies that you can use yourself in game, that you can sort of learn from the stories.
Right, definitely. So yeah, sort of the next section, it kind of goes over the natural history of the world, and basically it talks about a lot of the different animals. It talks about like birds, like it shows pictures of parrots and toucans and things like that. It also talks about other animals we haven't seen in games, such as like crabs we haven't seen in the game yet, or snails. So it kind of does lend itself to the fact that there could be like, say, a fisherman or sort of seafood trading company at some point, because there's a lot of different sea animals that are listed in here that aren't available in game yet.
Yeah, he's been sort of very observant of the world, hasn't he? There's a dodo. I would love to see
yes.
a dodo in the game. That and turtles, I think, and I'd be happy completely.
That'd be really interesting, yeah.
You got all the drawings of the plants, and he talks about forcing into my mouth the most refreshing treats was laughably amongst the most intimidating challenges he's ever done. So I suppose it must be Rosie and the crew are out there sort of foraging for bits and pieces. But you've got these lovely sketches of the different plants that you can find in game, and like you say, the animals, the crabs, the snakes, and it's here where we see the first appearance of the cook, isn't it, as well? When they're talking about snakes.
Oh yes, the cook as in Jean. Yes, you meant
yes,
the author. Yeah. But yeah, he appears and he's kind of, we'll get into it a little more later, but his speech is definitely hard to decipher. So
Very, yes. It's got a very
you have to kind of think about it as you're deciphering it.
yeah, very phonetic spelling there.
Yes. But it also talks about water pegs or boars, which is really interesting because currently we have regular, like farm pigs that are available, but it'll be very interesting to see, like, say, a boar in the world at some point if that comes, because they might
Yes.
charge at you and they might be dangerous. So
Oh, absolutely, yes. Because there's like the tribal pictures, the tribal, or the ancient, I suppose we should call them, altars about the place with these obviously sort of type totem animals. We've got the bird, we've got the snake, and then we've got this magnificent pictures of boars on certain of the islands, and that would be quite scary, wouldn't it? Because I think boars can be quite dangerous animals. But to imagine,
absolutely. I mean, I think they'd be more dangerous than snakes because snakes can't really chase you. Like the boar could probably chase you.
I think the boar could run pretty fast, and he's got
Probably, yes.
quite a nice pair of tusks on his face there.
But they also get into some other things, like they actually show Blind Eye Bob, which he looks pretty interesting.
Yes,
So, which we
yes,
do know now that he is in the Pirate Legend Tavern, so that's interesting as well.
that's right. Yeah, and we have a sketch of the music box, so we start to see some of the instruments that are available, the hurdy-gurdy there, and the concertina that's Blind Bob is playing. Yeah, and
Right.
I wonder if he's quite a sort of a newish character, Blind Bob. I mean, in the book here, I suppose it's the first sort of hints or the first sort of appearance of him. I mean,
Yeah,
Flameheart is, as we know, sort of later on, becomes Bones, doesn't he? And which must be the Captain Bones on Twitter. Do you think?
it could be, yeah. I mean, it would make sense, I guess.
Yeah, so it could be sort of later on. But Blind Bob has been sort of absent up until now, but he's sort of quite a significant character, isn't he? I think.
Yeah, he definitely seems interesting, and I'd love to find out, like, his full story at some point,
Mm,
like his full background, or maybe he wasn't always blind, or who knows, but it'd be interesting to find his full background at some point.
yes, yeah.
But we won't get into
Um,
all of them, but it also
no.
gets into, like, some of the gambling games, so it'd be interesting to see some
Yes,
of these gambling games in-game at some point, like, it talks about Liar's Dice, and a game called Betty, a game called Carnath, so
that's
it'd be
right.
very interesting to try and play some of these games in the world, and a lot of them seem pretty simple, too, where it wouldn't take a lot of learning to play these games.
No, that's right. They are very easy to pick up. I think the Carnath, in the Sea of Thieves store, you can buy a pack of cards, and they have the rules for Carnath included in the pack.
Yeah,
I
which is really
think.
cool.
Yeah. So it's that connection again, isn't it, between which is quite nice. So you've got the game, but then you have the book with the lore, but then you also have items that you can sort of get hold of that you can purchase, or that are also connected to the world, to the game. So it's making it a sort of big whole, if you like,
No,
more
right, and
complete.
I
And then
think
we
these
go and we've
games would be a lot
got
of fun to play, for sure.
yes, oh yes,
But then we kind of get into, I would say, we start getting into what is the meat of the book, because a lot of the
mm,
stuff that comes before this point is kind of like subtext. It's kind of like getting you acquainted with the world.
mm,
But at this point where it talks about cursed objects, I would say this is where we get into the meat of our story. And
yes,
I'll read a little passage that talks about one of these cursed objects that I thought was really cool. It's basically the first mention of something that we haven't seen yet, but it's definitely very intriguing.
mm-hmm,
So he writes in his journal, once hauled free of the sod and grime that had so long ensnared our prize, we found ourselves staring down at a small black slate chest that sat surprisingly untouched by the passage of time. Silvery, illegible script crawled across every surface, betraying no clue to the contents of its original owner. Red Rosie reached out to pry open the clasp, but Isidro stopped her in her tracks with a low grumble, one matched a moment later by thunder on the horizon. It was time to leave. this is
Mm.
very interesting. And basically, they find this chest that's described there, and this kind of leads us on the rest of our adventure for the entire book. So that's kind of why I picked that passage, because this chest is very important. And as we talk about
Yes.
the book more, I mean, we'll find out more about this chest, but it seems to be with the object that the Order of Souls person wanted him to find, and he has actually found this. So you
Yes.
think that this means, oh, great, he found it, easy enough, but as we find out, it wasn't that easy. So
No, that's right. I mean, it's just and it fits. It sort of fits well in with a world where we know there are things like, mermaids, where we know there is, the Kraken. We know there are these strange trading companies. So it's like it's on the borderline between sort of reality and myth, if you like. So you can find cursed objects. They're real, and the curses are real. They're not just um, stories. And yes, like you
right,
say, the whole tale starts to become much more interesting. It becomes more of a story now, doesn't it? There's
definitely.
something to
Yeah, because up until
investigate.
this point, it was more of like a journal of like how he got acquainted with things. But
Mm.
from this point on, it becomes more of a story, I'd say, like you said. So
Yes, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I think so too. And they mentioned here the cursed chests also that you can find in game, the chest of 1,000 grogs and the chest of sorrows, don't they? So we've
yes,
already in game experienced some cursed chests, if you like. But there's this other one that he's found.
definitely. But then it kind of goes into basically right after they find this chest, they find themselves in a predicament, and someone was actually trying to attack them. A ship came for them, and
Hmm.
basically the section is kind of titled "Farewell, My Silver Blade." Do you
Yeah.
want to talk about Captain Flameheart's, what he thinks at the time is a genius move?
Well, he thought it was a genius move to sail into the Devil's Shroud, basically.
Yes.
But before that, even that, he's thinking about dropping the anchor. Um, he says, "A harsh laugh escaped my dry lips as I exulted, intending to suggest, indeed command, that we drop anchor and lick our proverbial wounds. Um, but actually, it's Isidro who turns round and calls him a bloody fool," he says. "You've sent us
Right.
straight to the Devil's Shroud." Um, and we get there's this fantastic description about what is going on with the ship while they're sailing through this, um, Devil's Shroud. Every hole we patched and bunged, two more ruptures took its place. Um, the silver blade was dying, the ghastly fog choking the life out of her with its chill touch. So yeah, quite a disaster, and quite sad really, because it's not that long after he's actually arrived in the Sea of Thieves. So it doesn't do much for his credibility, I don't think, sadly.
Right, yeah. I mean, he basically just got there, and then he pretty much already sunk their ship because he sailed them right into this. And Zedro definitely isn't happy. He's like, "What are you doing? Like, you sailed us into Devil's Shroud. Everyone knows not to go there." So,
Yeah, and you got the comments from Belle and Nura at the bottom, and Nura saying, "Oh dear, I blame the mushrooms," and Bella's saying, "What I thought too, but in a lot more dramatic words with some bad ones you really hate me using." So
right.
I think they probably weren't very impressed
Which
either.
that kind of gives the listeners like an idea of how Belle and Nura, they kind of like just kind of heckle throughout the first part of the book. So it's
Mm,
kind of interesting.
that's right, yeah, sort of a commentary on it, what he's
But
doing.
then we kind of find out basically about the pirate lord and the Ferry of the Damned, which is very interesting.
Yes, that's right, yeah. The Ferry of the Damned and its captain. And you've got some sort of marvellous illustrations of the detail that you can see on the ferry, and the unicorns. I'd like to know more about the unicorns actually, because they sort of feature sort of quite strongly on the Ferry of the Damned, and I'm not sure why that is. But it also um, sort of puts the Ferry of the Damned in context. Well, sort of later on. Um, It
Right,
talks
yeah.
much more about the Ferry of the Damned. Then he goes on to talk about the merfolk. So again, we're sort of taken away from the the sinking of the Silver Blade into looking at the more mystical aspects of Sea of Thieves life, I suppose. The mermaids and the Ferry of the Damned and um, skeletons, of course.
Yes, so basically it talks about merfolk and the Fairy of the Damned, things like that, but the reason why we're kind of skipping by that right now is because we're going to get into that more in detail after we talk about Belle and Noura's story, because there's details in their story that kind of work along with his story. So
That's right.
but basically, once we get past that, the book kind of continues with his story. You know, they're shipwrecked, and basically everyone's kind of annoyed with him. And after licking their wounds for a few days, they sort of find this cave, and
Yes.
they
Yeah.
kind of go towards that cave. So
Yes, it's
basically,
a
basically they
very
go
very
into this
interesting one.
cave, and they have a very interesting time in that cave, and they drop down, and he actually finds this golden chalice. Do you want to talk about the meaning of that chalice?
Yeah, I mean, thinking about this is, and knowing sort of Mike Chapman's love of the Goonies, it's again, there's another sort of parallel there
Right.
almost, isn't it? Where you've got sort of real life people, real life gang of friends, a crew, if you like, boys, um, suddenly sort of being thrust out of the real world into something that is a little bit more fantastical. So we've had the talk about mermaids and skeletons, and here we've got this goblet, and they can't decide, or Belle and Nura can't decide whether it's the water or it's the goblet that's cursed, because when they drink from this goblet, it satisfies their thirst. They're full of energy again, but they're not hungry. So they're walking
Right.
along with this goblet, drinking and drinking, and it keeps refilling itself, presumably, and the whole crew just sort of takes a few sips from this goblet, and they're walking onwards, and they're happy, they're joyous, they're um, enraptured, aren't they? They're enchanted, um, either by the goblet or what they've drunk from it.
Yeah,
And
definitely, because they drop down in this cave and
yeah,
they see this goblet and think, "Oh, great, we got some treasure." That's kind of what Flameheart thinks at first, and
mm,
they're all thirsty, so they think, "Well, why not just take drink some of this water with the goblet?" And
yeah,
basically, as you described, when they taste this water, to them it tastes like the best water they've ever had in their lives, and
mm,
it sort of takes away their hunger. They're not thirsty anymore, and as we kind of journey along the cave, they basically just keep drinking the water, and they just get more happy and more giddy, kind of more entranced.
yep. And they're sort of going deeper and further down, and it's darker, and I think they sort of become even more sort of mesmerized, so they can't remember if they've slept or how many days have passed or what time it is, until they come to this sort of final cavern.
Right. And basically, as it said, Flameheart is really the one that sort of retains his wits a little bit, but it
Mm,
seems like the rest of the crew is fully entranced.
yes.
And as you said, they come to this final cavern, and what they find is essentially a skeleton lord that actually laid this trap for them.
Mm. Yes, I mean it's interesting because not very much is said about him. He's just called the captain. Okay. But
Actually,
he
there's the captain with like just an
the
N. So
captain, the
yeah, it's not
captain,
even
the
called the
captain.
captain.
I
Yeah,
have to get my pirate accent. The captain.
exactly. Yeah, he has an accent too.
but the captain knew Flameheart's father,
Right.
and was actually, I think it says he was marooned there or left there by. Yes, he says, "You remind me of your father," the captain said, kept simply. "A fine crewman till he stranded me here. Perhaps you'll make an equally fine replacement." And I think Flameheart sort of realizes that, the crew of the Silver Blade are dead, disintegrating, um, but turning into skeletons. So sort of
Right.
becoming skeletal. He doesn't seem too disheartened by that particularly. It doesn't really sort of
Yeah, the
say
rest of
too
the crew
much,
is
but
so entranced they don't really care. They just want to follow the
no.
skeleton lore because basically either the water or the cup kind of sort of enslaved him to the skeleton lord. And I think Flameheart, it seems like he cares a little bit, but he doesn't care enough to actually do anything about it. Like, he can't do anything at that point. He knows what's happening, and he seems like he
Yeah,
regrets it, but he can't really stop it at this point.
no. His sort of free will has disappeared, doesn't it?
Right.
Did I have any last questions? He says, "Why me?" was the main one, and that was it. And the cat's mentioned at the very end of that section, isn't it? The cat's returned there as well. So, I mean, that sort of asks a bit of a question: as
But it
how
does
did,
kind of,
yeah,
well,
how
kind of
did he
like you were
get there?
saying too with his father, it does kind of tell the story of like an untold tale, sort of, because when he says, you make a fine crewman like your father, it kind of makes me think and speculate that maybe his father was part of his crew at one point, but his father sort of revolted against this guy, and this guy was his father's captain, and maybe that's
Hmm.
how his father became a captain. So maybe this is sort of like whoever this captain person is, maybe this is like his revenge against that family.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I would like to know a lot more about the stories of Flameheart's father, actually, like you say,
Right, same here.
and the role that this captain sort of played, and where Flameheart's father is now, whether he's still in the Sea of
Yeah,
Thieves,
whether
or
he's
is, yeah, or
maybe
in the
he's a
Sea of the
skeleton lord
Damned.
himself, or who knows, but
That's right. Yes. So the book, it does raise a lot of questions. There's more we want to know, um, about the stories and the characters that are in here, I think.
but
But this
pretty
is
much
where,
that's kind of like the end of all we know about Flameheart.
yeah, yeah,
Essentially, from that point on, we have to assume that he is dead. So, or he's at least either dead or part of the skeleton lord's skeleton army, basically.
yes, yeah. So that's the
Which to
end of the
me, like,
Silver
I don't know if
Blade.
it's when I first read through it, it actually really surprised me because I didn't think his story was going to end that fast. I mean, basically from that point on, we never hear a single word from him again. The rest of the book is all Captain Bell.
That's right. Yes, I mean, it's the same for me. It did surprise me as well how quickly it was over. But I think the book might have been about sort of three times as long if you were to go into very much more detail about um, Flameheart's journey and who the captain is and the rest of it. There's definitely sort of a novel
Right.
potential in there, isn't there? For the rest of the sort of connecting stories, the background.
But I do like how they did it this way, though, because the way
Mm,
they did it, essentially Captain Bell, she finds his journal and there's all these blank pages in the back, and that's what she uses to write her story in this same book. So it is
yes,
kind of nice how they did it that way because it basically allows for her to tell her story after reading his story. So his story kind of projected upon her journey, which I think is a really cool parallel to the game itself because basically, if I'm playing with someone, my story and my experiences will project on another player and so
mm,
on. So that's kind of how I saw it, like paralleling.
yes, yeah. That's a good point. And also because the previous it's his journal, isn't it? It's not. He's writing his experiences down. So um, at the end where he is sort of talking to the captain, it's going to be sort of quite brief, um, because of the point of
Right.
view from which it's written. But I like the change in style now when we have Belle telling her story, and we still have the little sort of inserts as Nura sort of comments here and there, and Belle replies, and it really does become much more of an adventure now. I think with this urge to go and find the chest or
Right.
whatever's on the map.
Yeah, because basically how I envisioned the timeline of this book is essentially Flameheart had the journal. he wrote down his journal, and then whatever happened to him, whether he died or whatever happened, occurred, and then the journal was just left there.
Mm,
Belle finds this journal, she reads it, and I envision that she makes her comments in the margins at that time, and
mm,
then what I imagine is that basically after the entire story is completed, after the entire journey is completed, that's when Belle finally shares the journal with Nura, and Nura writes her comments in. That's how I kind of envision it.
oh, right. Oh, okay. No, I sort of had them, or Nura coming along, after it'd been written, but perhaps at the end of the day or the end of the next day. So it's a little bit more sort of contemporary rather than waiting for the very end. But
It could be that way too, but
yeah,
the way I envision it that way is because as we go through Belle's story now, she seems to have a lot of guilt for not sharing her plans with Nura.
that's very
And
true. Yeah.
basically from that, I kind of read the context as like, at the end of all that's happened, she decides, okay, I'm going to share this with you. And we even see in the margins a little bit where she says, like, yeah, I'm kind of sorry about this, Nura, not that you're like finding this out about.
Yes. Yeah, but that's very true, actually.
I mean, that might not be the timeline, but that's kind of how I envisioned the timeline when I was reading it. So,
But it
but
works.
base,
Works either way. Works
yeah,
sort of
exactly.
very
So,
well, doesn't it?
but I guess
So Belle.
either version of the timeline, it's important to know that most of these journal entries, Nora doesn't know all the reader knows. Belle and the reader are the ones that know about this stuff, and Nora doesn't know about it yet. So that's important to note.
Yes. Yes. Belle. I mean, Belle's a very sort of strong character. I think
Right.
in that interview with the author, I think he had a vision of uh, somebody who played guitar for Prince. I think that was in the backing bands that he envisioned her as the basis for the character of Belle, called Marisabel. She says her name is, but Belle for short.
Right.
But as a very sort of quite strong, determined, quite powerful character.
Yeah, definitely. And I would definitely describe her as someone that if she sets her mind to something, then it's very hard to get her off that path.
Mm. Yeah, she is extremely determined, isn't she? I mean, there's you can sort of tell that she's not going to be put off. She's going to be finding out the secret, this treasure, this whatever it is, and then discovering what the curse is. Somehow they can use it to sort of benefit themselves. They can sell it to somebody, but just to solve the mystery of it.
Right. And basically, to kind of go over these characters a little bit, we already talked about Belle and Death, but
Mm,
essentially, Nura and Belle are married, and
mm.
I guess Nura, I would describe her as someone that has like a little bit more caution in her approach, and she seems to be a great fighter, but she doesn't seem to be as, I guess, headstrong to like rush into things as Belle is.
No, she's called Nine Cat Nura.
Right.
Um, I'd definitely like to know sort of more about Nura um, as well. I'm sort of quite intrigued about her. It does say somewhere that she's a little bit older than Belle, I think. But they grew up together, obviously on the sort of same island. But yes, she's definitely the sort of softer side of the partnership, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. And then basically the third person that's mentioned on their ship is, I don't know how you pronounce it, Jean or Jean, however you want to pronounce it, but
Jean,
hi-
yeah, either
yeah, I pronounced it as Jean when I read it, but it could be Jean. He could be like French or something. Who knows?
could be.
But
Yeah.
basically, he's nicknamed Half a Stew Jean, and essentially, he's the cook of the ship. He's not very intelligent, and he's definitely very illiterate, which we see in the little bit of writing he has in the book.
Yeah.
But by the end of the book, it does seem like he's a character that has a lot of good heart to him.
Yes, and he actually closes the story, doesn't he?
He does, yes.
Which is nice because it's it's his point of view of what happens at the very ends, but it's quite satisfying to read it that way, rather than from Belle's point of view or Noura's even. Um,
Right.
and he sort of does it through like a little series of letters, doesn't he, as if he's writing to Belle, but diary entries, journal entries
Right.
in the book.
And kind of the last character we have in this portion is someone named Cole. He is met later on, so we won't get into them too much because
Not just
we'll
him.
talk about like how the story progressed. But essentially, what you would need to know at this point is when he is first met, he is described as someone that could be untrustworthy and possibly a coward. That's kind of how he's described. So,
Yes, this is a
but
interesting
basically,
character.
at this point in the novel, we kind of kick off right with Belle. She is intrigued by Captain Flameheart's tale, and essentially she wants to find this cursed chest because she thinks it could still be there at the bottom of where the Devil's Shroud was, and she wants to find this and figure out what it was.
Yes, yeah, and the other interesting thing is the skeleton is on the island where they grew up. Um,
That is true,
you
yes.
know, this a long time dead guy. His bows are here on the beach we've been partying on since we were little. Now, it's interesting also because the skeleton seems to move, which I think she mentions sort of throughout their story that she goes back to find the set of bones at one point, and she thinks that's a bit weird. You know, he wasn't there; he was somewhere else. So it makes me wonder here whether he appeared on the beach for a reason, and they just discovered the journal and um, the adventure at that specific time for a reason.
Right. Yeah, I mean, maybe they did because it was an island they grew up on. And kind of like you said, the skeleton moves around, which really throws Belle off because she goes to find this chest, but then she realizes from the journal that Captain Flameheart locked it in the brig, and then she doesn't have the keys for it. And
Hmm.
she realizes, oh, wait, he's probably the type of guy that kept the keys on him. So she goes back to the island to look for the skeleton, but the skeleton's not in the same spot. So that's really interesting to find out.
That's yes. So that's a bit, and because she says to Nura, doesn't she? I think that he's a living skeleton. He's still
Right.
alive because of that. So yeah, that's quite spooky.
Which is interesting in terms of the actual game because every skeleton we see on the islands that are like just laying there, they're not anything we can interact with. So it's very interesting to me because I pictured it as when she first saw him, he was just like laying on the beach and supposedly, a dead skeleton. But
Yeah.
then if he's moving, do these skeletons perhaps like rest at some point? They still rest because the skeletons we actually encounter in our version of the game, they all come attack us. But
Yes.
kind of like when Belle talks about it, I think it's a little bit later on, but she describes maybe there's such a thing as good skeletons. Maybe there's skeletons that won't attack
Yes.
you.
Yes, and they're quite. It's like Bones, Mr. Bones, as they start calling him, is um, a bit more sort of intelligent or a bit
Right.
more sort of self-directed than the skeletons that rise up out of the sand that we fight in the game. And it made me wonder at the time when I read this, it made me wonder, well, is he still there? Is he in the game? Is he in the
Right.
game
Yeah, that'd
somewhere?
be really
Can I
interesting.
actually go and find him? Sort of sitting on a beach,
Definitely.
clutching his book somewhere, because because that would be fantastic. If you could do that, that connection between this lore, the story, and these people who lived so long ago, um, presumably in the story, and something that's in the game now, something quite specific. And plus, of course, we have Mr. Bones, we have Captain Bones on Twitter as well, with who was there before the official Sea of Thieves account was made, dropping hints, and
Yeah, so maybe that's why they call them Mr. Bones in the book. So who knows?
that's
But
yeah, absolutely could be, yeah, absolutely.
They like to drop
Yeah.
little hints like that, so.
Yeah, it's little details that make it a bit more fascinating, don't they? I think.
But essentially, she does get the keys off of him, and she does go retrieve this cursed chest and bring it back to the ship. But
Mm,
the rest of the crew, including Ja and Nura, they don't know about this, so they don't know what's on the ship.
no. And she does, it's quite significant that it is a cursed chest and it's on the ship. And the crew can sense it because she says somewhere that the crew aren't pleased because of the cursed chest being on there, and that she hears sort of voices coming from it, and the front of it sort of ripples. It's quite a sinister thing, isn't it? It's quite a malevolent feel
Right.
to this chest that she's brought on board.
Yeah, definitely. And at this point, and also a little bit earlier in the book, we learn that basically as a child, Belle has had these earrings where she can speak to mermaids with them, or merfolk.
Mm,
So this is kind of like where she sort of has a plan, because she figures, I can't recognize this writing on the chest. I can read that it says don't open, but that's all I can really tell from it. So
yeah,
sort of what her plan is to find the mermaids or merfolk and actually ask them about it. Maybe they can figure out what's going on with the chest, what's
that's
inside it,
right.
or what the story is behind it.
Yes. And then we get all that sort of magnificent sort of background about the mermaids, don't we? And
We do.
their relationship with the people um, living in Sea of Thieves now and the ones who are in the past. And there's this lovely thing about whether they'd actually made a bargain, and how was the bargain struck that the mermaids would rescue pirates, um, what was paid, what was promised about it, and sort of the poem about the mermaids, that they're not the the Ariel Disney type um, mermaids that again most of us are familiar with, that they're something slightly different, aren't they? And again, they can also be drowned sailors. So on one of the pages, I think it's day 11, you've got where you've got a figure who obviously looks like a drowned pirate, or a pirate who is morphing into something much more sort of fish-like, I don't know, mermaid-like, and that's a bit like the Comic-Con art, I think, that was
Right.
shown, isn't it? Where we saw pictures of mermaids in different sort of stages of transformation. So I wonder if there are sort of two different types of the mermaids, where you've got the sailor, the drowned sailor version, and you have like an original version. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I mean, it definitely says that basically the mermaids can kind of choose you and make you one of their own. So
Yes. So she
we'll
goes
get in.
on.
Yeah, so she kind of goes on, and basically she knows from her ability to talk with the mermaids that by Golden Sands Outpost, there's supposed to be, I guess, like a special mermaid place where you can meet with them. So she tries to seek that out. But while she's doing this, she tries to downplay it with her crew to make it look like there's a different reason behind it. So none of the
Mm,
crew really suspects what she's doing.
no. And it's interesting that the island she describes doesn't seem to be in game at the moment. I suppose it may have been sort of like hidden in the shroud again, or overtaken by the Devil's Shroud. But it sounds a much more sort of significant island, do you think? Because she talks about temples and walkways,
It does,
um,
yes.
yeah, and sort of ruins. So it sounds quite a large island, but quite substantial
Which we'll
remains
get
on
into that
there.
a little bit more when we get to like the ending of the book. But
Yeah.
I mean, when I was reading through this, it instantly made me think of the major DLC Forsaken Shores that's coming. I think that could have something to do with that, possibly.
Ah, yes, 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 it
So
could be. A lot of people are sort of suggesting at the moment they think that the Hungering Seas might be mermaids. I know I've seen some sort of posts about that, and that would be interesting to find out. We don't know, do we? But I think
we
I
don't, but it'd
really
be
like the
interesting.
idea of knowing more about the mermaids, and more involvement in the game. I'm really looking forward to that extra involvement, I think.
Yeah, definitely. But basically, in terms of her story, she talks to the mermaids, and basically they try to just brush her off, and they seem fearful of whatever this chest is,
Mm,
and they don't really even want to engage with her. So then that kind of clues her in, like, wow, if the mermaids are even fearful of this chest, like, what is this thing?
that's right. Something really sort of serious. Um,
Right. So yeah, basically her plan at that point is to try and maybe sell it to a vendor somewhere, like, and just get some cash for it, but she can't
yes.
really do that in time based on what happens. Do you want to talk about what happens to them next?
Right. So let's have a think.
This is kind of where they encounter the ships that attack them.
Oh, that's right. So they're
Yes.
golden from Golden Sands. They're planning to go off into the wilds, aren't they? I think to a particular sort of island. But before they can sort of get very far, they're fired upon because I think Nura loads up their ship with some merchant materials, so they can sail off. But I think they're fired upon by one ship, and then they're boarded by Cole and his companions, aren't they? Is that right? Have I got the wrong
Um,
place?
it actually describes two ships that attack them, but
Yes,
they
yeah,
basically pull some maneuvers off where they employ an anchor turn, and
that's right.
they dispatch the first ship, and then Cole is said to be like part of that second ship, I guess, and basically they end up killing his crew except for him, but when they're about to kill him, they see him like on the ladder, and
That's
Belle's
right. He
about
says he knows about the chest, doesn't he?
right, yeah, and
Yeah.
Belle's about to kill him, and then he says that, and that kind of makes her think, and then they put him in the brig. So they keep him alive
Yes.
and put him in the brig. So Cole is first introduced as basically their prison.
That's right. Yes.
And at this point, it's kind of where she talks about, Cole seems really untrustworthy, and I don't know if we can trust him. And basically, in the margins, it kind of says, Nura, you can read his story and see what you think. So, do you want to talk about Cole says his story is?
Yeah. See, I mean, he talks about them being employed by a patron, and he talks about Flameheart's sort of crew and old Flameheart been tottering on skeletal feet for quite some years since his final diary entry. Um, and he talks about the twisted knife, which could be another faction. It could be a secret group. It could be somebody working for um, the Order of the Souls, perhaps. They sound very much like assassins. He says what they do is, they go and kill pirates, basically. He asks her, has the chest whispered to you yet? If not, it can only be a matter of time. So he obviously knows, or his patron knows a great deal
About the chest,
about the
right?
chest, yeah. But we don't know who the patron is. Now, it did strike me that is it the old woman? Is the old woman the patron? Who's
That's
been.
kind of what I thought when I read it,
Mm,
because I thought it was the same old woman that tried to get Flameheart to do the job originally.
yes, yes. And yeah, and that sort of fits in because it's because he's quite familiar with Flameheart and Flameheart's crew and what they've been doing, and this is something that has been sort of going on for hundreds of years, and that the
Right.
Order of the Souls are like a timeless, ageless group, um, company, very sort of mystical.
Right, definitely. And it basically sounds like this patron just kind of keeps employing people to try and go out to get that chest.
Mm, yeah,
Because it says at one point that they were probably excited that Flameheart found the chest, but then when he lost the chest, it was lost and they didn't know where it was. But then Belle picks it up, and it sounds like the patron probably switched approaches at one point, because Flameheart is obviously very different than what this Cole and his crew would be, because it sounds like originally this patron was trying to send just, a general explorer out to go get the chest, but when they realized that didn't really work, this sounds like they actually sought out and hired this Twisted Knife group, which this Twisted Knife group seems like they're a group that just is out for blood, and basically they sent this group to attack Nura and Belle and try to wipe
Yes.
them out.
Yes, I mean, it says in here, quite why my patron chose to take the chest from you by force rather than simply engaging in a trade is frankly of little interest to me. So obviously then it makes it sound like that, that they're not short of money. They will, trade and get this chest by any means. But for some reason, I don't know, perhaps time is short, or maybe because the mermaids are involved. I don't know that they, or perhaps they didn't see Belle and Nura as difficult to defeat. Perhaps easy opposition. They sent the Twisted Knife in
Which maybe
to
that's what they
steal it.
thought.
Yeah.
Of course, that didn't work out, though, because they capture Cole, and
Yes.
basically Cole tries to play it off like, hey, I don't care what, happens with that anymore, just set me free, let me live my life. You can do what you want. I'll take you to that patron if you want. I'll take you right there. And they kind of don't really trust him, but they trust him enough to actually go to this patron and just kind of end all the, troubles they've had with this chest. So
yeah. So I think in the end, Belle says we're going to find this guy and give him his chest. So Flameheart, presumably, is what they're intending to do, isn't it? They're going to give it back to him, I think.
Well, they're going to give it to the patron, is what they're trying to do. They're trying to give the chest to the patron and just get some money for it and kind of end all this, because they realize it seems like Belle is really conflicted because she doesn't trust Cole, but she also knows that Cole is probably telling the truth, that more and more Twisted Knife ships are going to come after them if they don't get rid of the chest.
Yes, it's not going to end very well. So some rich cow is sending suckers like Faintheart out on a fool's errand to bring home a cursed chest.
Right.
So she wants to see how much they can get out of them. But almost straight away, we get the Kraken appearing on the scene, don't we?
Yeah, the chest basically whispers, and it's heavily implied, if not stated, that basically this chest calls out to a Kraken, and it brings the Kraken on your ship.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's almost like 95% chance that's what the chest does, but it doesn't specifically say it, but I think it's pretty evident.
No, it's not. I think later on when they're sort of musing over what the chest was, people that Bella's talked to say, well, it's a cursed chest and it caused the Kraken.
Right.
And yes, we don't know. So again, that's something, because this cursed chest itself isn't in the game at the moment. We do have cursed chests. If this appears, or something similar appears in the game, okay, we won't know exactly what it's going to do, will we? Does it call the Kraken? Or was that something else? Was that just a coincidence?
Right. I kind of feel like it will, and if it appears in game, that's how I'm going to treat it after reading this, but I guess we'll find out, so.
I think so.
But I feel like in terms of this coming into game, I feel like how it would be introduced into game is, I think a new trading company would come from the Twisted Knife, and the chest would come with that. I think that's kind of how that will be employed, but we'll see how it happens, I guess.
Yes, and Captain Bones presumably as well. Maybe it'll be part of, because we've got these weekly events coming up, and we've got these big sort of DLCs, haven't we? So there's this, and I think Mike Chapman has always said that the world is going to be changing. It's not going to be a static world. When you go to sort of some of these trades, I think particularly the Order of the Soul, she says, come back quick, I might not be here when you get back.
Right.
So there will be sort of trading companies coming and going, and people coming and going, much like the players will come and go, I think, throughout the world. So it's changing, and yeah, I think the twisted knife, the smugglers even that they talk about in the book um, could make an appearance.
No, definitely. I mean, I think that could come as well, but basically getting in line with like the rest of her story, their ship
Mm,
does sink from the Kraken. She
mm,
basically thinks it's, a really good idea to actually attack the Kraken instead of run away from it, and that does not end out well for her. But
no, I think probably because the power of the chest. She says, was the chest
right,
itself calling out to it like a Kraken whistle? That'd be a crazy
right,
prize for some rich idiot's mantelpiece. So yes, she had a theory that she was going to jump in and lure it away from the ship. Um, but because it heard the chest cry or call out, the Kraken destroyed their ship, didn't it?
right. But essentially, at that point in the story, their ship is gone. It's destroyed.
Mm,
The chest, wherever it was, sunk to the bottom of the ocean again. So that chest is still presumably out there again.
yes,
And basically, what happens next is throughout this time, there's little subtle hints that Cole is getting really close to Jean the Cook,
mm,
and basically these hints come to a forefront because what happens is Jean the cook, he makes a dinner for them, and in this dinner there's poison, so basically the
yes,
crew gets poisoned, and then when Belle and Nora wake up, Cole has had his men kind of jump them, and they're basically captives.
yes, yeah. So she says it's a mutiny. It's a mutiny. So Cole just
Right.
is there to take over the ship and make the best of a bad job, I suppose. At the end of the day, because he's lost the chest, he probably can't go back to his patron. Um,
Which little clues of like this being a mutiny are also given beforehand as well, because
mm,
we have to remember that Belle, she lied to the crew about the chest, and she never really told anyone her intentions. So it
no,
seems like the crew lost trust in her when she didn't actually convey her intentions with it.
yes, there's a big quite a big theme through sort of Belle's whole story, isn't there, about the importance of sort of a crew and the trust of your crew and proving yourself a
Right.
capable captain. And that's extremely important, isn't it? So obviously, by sort of bringing this chest aboard and not sort of being straight with the crew, they were sort of losing their trust in her as a leader, perhaps. Um, yes.
Yeah, definitely. And basically from that point, it's a pretty sad tale because Belle gets locked in the captain's cabin and she has to listen while the crewmates were actually like on her side. They just are forced to walk the plank and she just listens to
Mm,
them drowning.
yes. Yeah.
And then
And
eventually they make her listen to Nora being murdered.
yes. And then you get this sort of absolute sort of fury, this sort of anger, and determination to um, have her revenge. Because obviously we know about the ferry, they know about the ferry, that death isn't a one-way trip. It's not a permanent thing. That they will come back, and then later on, or sort of alongside that knowledge, you have Jean um, saying things like, "Well, we know when you come back. I mean, you're going to sort of get your revenge on this guy Cole, and he's going to regret everything he did." Um,
Right.
and that's sort of the last point of the story, is that very last letter, isn't it, from Jean?
Yeah, basically the end of the story is essentially Gene kind of trying to apologize to Belle, and he's basically saying, they tricked me. I didn't really understand what was going on, which as a reader, I kind of believed him because it seems like he was the type that is very easy to trick. And it also says that he was sort of threatened and blackmailed that if he didn't go along with it, then they would have killed him and killed Belle.
That's right. Yeah. It's called Good Riddance to Bad Rubbish, isn't it? The very last letter,
Yes.
which is and it is a happy ending because he comes back on. He says, "I watched you dragging Cole to your cabin by his hair after kicking the stuffing out of him, and then I saw you walk back out of your cabin with Nura, both home at last." So
Right, yeah. And basically, a little bit before he gets that too, I'll just mention quick that
mm,
he does have some recipes and songs, which are kind of funny, to see his like writing of the
yes,
recipes and songs. But
yes, oh yes, because as the last part of the books we got the words to sort of Bosun Bill and Grog
right,
Mails, and also We Shall Sail Together. Um, but yes, he's still. I think he's probably not too smart, but he's loyal um, to Belle and Nura, and glad to see them
definitely,
back. I think at the end.
yeah, definitely. And basically, they come back and get their revenge on Cole, but kind of the unanswered question at the end is what happened to Flameheart originally, and what happened to this chest. So that's kind of like the
Yes,
big unanswered void that we're left with.
yeah. So the chest is still out there,
It is.
out there somewhere, um, waiting to be found. Yes, indeed. And the patron, presumably, still looking
Yes.
for it.
But that's kind of like the big overview of the entire story. I mean, I did write down some things that we can kind of get into a little bit more with the lore itself, just
Hmm.
going a little bit deeper into those. So it does talk a lot about what the Devil's Shroud is, and
Yes.
basically it's kind of an explanation for the phenomenon at the edge of the map. So it's described as a mist in the book, like we said, but for
Mm.
us in the game, it's like a Red Sea, sort of. So it's a little bit
Yes.
of a difference there. But
Yes.
I think the most interesting thing about the shroud is it's said to be moving and changing, because at the point where Belle is at Golden Sands Outpost talking to the mermaids, she says that the spot, like the island that she's talking to them at,
Mm.
she says that she sees a mist coming, and it's basically kind of given us a clue that like the shroud took over that island, and you can
Yeah.
no longer get to that island right now. So I think that's why we don't see that island in game, because the shroud is covering at the moment.
Yes. And I think she also goes on to say, to describe another island, and she says it's only just recently broken free of the shroud. I don't know
Right.
if she's talking about the shores of plenty. I can't quite remember, but
Yeah, she did mention that, and
definitely,
yeah,
yeah, definitely brings it up, which is really a great premise for um, our world, our game world, changing, isn't it? New
right,
sort of areas being added, and also um, think perhaps parts of it being lost even. So,
right.
but change. Um, I think, which is a great way to add variety to a sailing a pirate video game, isn't
Well, and
it?
it's really cool that they
Uh,
built this into the lore too, because
yeah,
it kind of explains a lot for us as players. Because the ancient isles and the wilds, they have a lot more, like, I guess, human involvement on those islands. But the shores
yeah,
of plenty, since, like, as she says, it just recently came out of the shroud, less
mm,
humans have been to the shores of plenty. So that's why you see less, like, artifacts and things there.
yeah.
Whereas,
So
like,
you
the
don't.
ancient
Yeah,
isles, you
that's
see a
right.
lot more. Yeah.
Yes. So the cave painting. So the ancient isles, presumably, then from that were the first.
Right. And then the wilds probably
Um,
second, I would say.
yeah, yeah, I think so. And then shores of plenty, much newer. Yes, I think that works, doesn't it? So I'm just trying to think of where the altars are. The animals, the sunstones, um, and all the caves with the artifacts in, and they are all around that sort of corner-ish area, bottom of the map, from what I
Yes. I mean,
remember. Yeah,
whatever was at the Asian Isles was definitely there for a long time. So
yeah.
that is definitely where the Sea of Thieves seem to have originated, essentially.
So it makes you wonder then, doesn't it? If because they worship bird gods and boar gods, and they had some sort of rapport going with the mermaids. Is that how the Sea of Thieves originated? Is it some sort of ancient magic? Is it the original home of the mermaids that they've created to protect themselves, perhaps, and that we've stumbled across by accident. As
Yeah, it could be.
explorers and sailors, sort of lends itself to a lot of sort of speculation, I think.
Well, I think what they built in with this Devil's Shroud, too, I think it builds in a great tactic for Rare to convincingly allow more maps in the future and stuff. And I think
Yes.
whatever Forsaken Shores is, I think this is kind of how it's going to tie into the lore. I think it's going to be like, okay, whatever islands are, the Shroud has now uncovered them. You can get to these islands now. I think that's kind of how it's going to come about.
Yes, I think so too. Yeah. Yeah. And it's supposed to be a very treacherous part of the world, isn't it?
It is,
I think
yes.
it was how it was described in the podcast. So, yeah, I wonder which part of the world it's going to be in. I was sort of having a look at the map the other day, and there's a little bit of a gap down by the bottom of the Ancient Isles in the southeast of the map, but also up in the northwest. No, got that the other way around. Northeast, southwest. I think there are 2 gaps potentially, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe that's where it's going to come. So that'd be very interesting if that does come about like that.
Will be a little bit of a time to wait till that happens, but
it's definitely exciting to think about, though, after reading this, especially.
Yes, that's right.
But one of the other areas that kind of like describes the mechanics of the lore, we talked about it a little bit earlier, the Ferry of the Damned and how they deal with death. It's described a lot in this book, how it actually ties into the lore. Yes. I know we had a short passage picked out, if you want to read that little passage real quick.
Yep, I'll read that one. So it's Belle describing. So they say that death used to be just death, a one-way trip. No ferry, no way back, just lost forever in that place. And then the captain came with his ghost ship and his door and gave us all a second chance, and a third chance, and a fourth chance. Maybe one time there'll be no more chances. Or maybe there will come a time where you say to yourself that you're just going to stay because it's easier, or because it's your time, like you're old enough and have lived your life. But knowing that we can always come back from there to continue and learn from our mistakes is a lot of what makes us stronger as people. If you do learn, that is. Some idiots just don't, and even if they crawl their way back, they're just no good to me and this crew. And that's, yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah, same here. And just that passage alone, I think, is a great passage to tell about how the mechanic works, because just as it says in the start of it, like, dead used to mean dead in Sea of Thieves. Like, there was no coming back from it. But it sounds like at some point the ferry captain started saving souls and allowing them to come back to life.
Yes, that's right. And it's got a lot of parallels, hasn't it, in sort of other legends and myths, sort of Greek legends and myths, being able to sort of come back across sort of river Styx and what have you. And also it makes that sort of magical thing that happens in games, like being resurrected or respawned, plausible within the world of Sea of Thieves, within the way how things work within that world. And it's also very nice that you have that little sort of philosophical thing about, you get the chance to learn from something you did wrong and do it differently when you come back.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's very interesting how they designed this, and it's really cool because a lot of games don't actually explain that lore. They just be like, oh yeah, you just came back, but
yeah,
it actually explains how it ties into the world, which is very cool.
Yeah, and makes sense. And again, you've got that uncertainty which you have sort of all the way around with sort of Sea of Thieves, that it may not be there all the time. It might disappear one day. You'll be dead. That'll be it.
That would suck, but I guess we'll find out.
It would. Big time, I think.
But yes. Yeah, just touching on it a little more, basically it says that the ferry captain, he rescues souls from the Sea of the Damned,
Mm.
and he heals you on the ship before you're coming back to life. But it does kind of make a mention of what was, like, I think the canceled death tax, where you had to bargain your way back to life. But fortunately,
Yeah.
Rare canceled that, so
Yeah,
I think that
I
was
know
how they. Yeah,
they did say that you might, or that they were thinking of, or it has been mentioned that you might have to do something for the captain of
for
the
the
ferry of
captain,
the
right?
damned. Yeah, so not necessarily pay, not necessarily pay him, but do a task for him, or perhaps he could give you a map, he could give you a riddle, he could give you something to do. You could beat him at dice, or something. I
Right.
don't know whether it was the death tax. I don't know whether it would um, be just the death tax. I always had the impression it was going to be a little bit more than just handing over some coins. But you could well be right there. But I like the idea also that he's a bit of a mystery. Where did he come from?
Yeah,
The
definitely. It
captain,
doesn't
his
say
ghost
anything about where
ship.
he came from.
No, but we do know that Belle's father, I think, um, talked to the crew of the Ferry of the Damned. She mentions, so, and almost became one of them. So there is a chance or a possibility of interacting with the ghost captain at some point, perhaps.
Which would be very cool, but
Which would be very cool indeed. Yeah, yeah,
I mean, it also leaves room for a lot of players would probably read this portion and think, okay, well, how does that explain the skeletons? But it actually goes as far as to explain how skeletons are there too, because
yes,
basically how it looks is the captain can't actually save everyone, so the skeletons are basically souls that didn't make it back, and they found some bones and they kind of inhabited those bones.
yes, yeah. And I think it's also lovely how they talk about ghosts. Um, Ghosts can come back because they have a connection with people who are still in the world, but they're harmless and they sort of float around. They're just like echoes, just like lost souls, um, wandering about the world. And something else sort of occurred to me here. This choice about whether you come back from the Ferry of the Damned, if you're a player perhaps who's disappeared out of the world, who's moved on to another game, or um, doesn't play Sea of Thieves anymore, then you could be one of those who chose not to return from the ferry. In theory,
Yeah, I guess in theory you could do that. I mean, who knows how they're going to do it long term, but it definitely allows for a lot of possibilities, I would say.
mm,
But we can kind of get into one of the other, like, big discoveries that they had. I mean, we talked a little bit about it as we went through the story, but this cursed chest, basically, it seems like it's very valuable, and
mm,
it seems like there's a benefactor that hires people to hunt for it.
mm.
And what's interesting as you read through the story is it seems like the chest is safe on land, but when you're in the water, it seems like it calls out to the Kraken to come try to kill you. So, and then
Right.
it
Yes.
also says that the chest's contents are unknown, and it can be heard speaking and has like a face on it that seems to shift. And at the very end of the book, there's like actually a picture of what it's supposed to possibly look like.
Yes. Yes. Now we've seen that before somewhere. I don't know if it's in the art. It must be in the art book as well, but also probably some early concept art that was released. I think.
Yeah,
I
it's
know.
definitely very cool. I mean, I
Yeah.
definitely want to find this chest when it comes into play. So
Yes. Yeah. That's going to be a very
I think
exciting
if they do
event.
bring this into play, though, Rare will have to make some tweaks to the Kraken, because as of right now, if it does call the Kraken to you, no one's really afraid of the Kraken. But
No.
so I think they'll have to make it a little bit more difficult to face the Kraken if this does come into play.
Yes. No. I agree. I mean, I haven't encountered the Kraken, but from the feedback I've seen and sort of heard people say about it, it's not a huge challenge at the moment, and it's missing some rather vital parts, isn't it? It's
Right.
the inky blackness and um, just his tentacles. sort of floating above the surface. So yes, it will be very interesting to see what the purpose of the chest is, whether it is a Kraken calling chest or whether it does something else, and whether it's going to feature later on in the
Yeah,
game.
definitely.
Hmm.
I'm definitely excited to find out though.
Yes, it's funny, isn't it? Because it's very easy to sort of speculate about sort of things that could be in the game and think the way that Rare could do things, but like throughout like the last couple of years, they they've always done things in ways that have been surprising and slightly different to how you might have imagined. So we've got things like the brig, for instance, and being able to shoot yourself out of a cannon. Um, so they've definitely got their way of giving us surprise and delight, I think they call it, which is fantastic. So I wouldn't want to assume anything about how this chest is going to reappear in the game. I think it could be quite an exciting or surprising way of happening, I think.
Yeah, it could even come about with like the weekly events that are planned. So it might be one of those that comes about.
Yeah, yeah, it could do.
But one of the other aspects we mentioned a little bit is sort of some new trading companies that are kind of like teased as a possibility in this book.
Mm,
It's never outright confirmed, but it definitely seems like the Twisted Knife could be a trading company in the future because basically, as Cole describes it, their focus is hunting down other pirates in like
mm.
kind of a PvP aspect, and it seems like there could possibly be a trading company in the future where it's PvP focused, where you might have like a contract, okay, go take out, X amount of ships, or you actually have to go take out someone to get a specific item and bring it back to like the trading company
Yes,
person.
or even because a lot of the talk has been around bounties for wanted pirates. People have been wanting to be wanted pirates. So
Right.
perhaps you do the opposite. You go and submit a name to the Twisted Knife. Then they will create a bounty for you, which somebody else would pick up to go and hunt this particular pirate. Although it's difficult to see how that would work given the way that the servers and the matchmaking is organised. Um, I'm not sure how you'd be able to
Yeah, I'm
do
not
that
sure if
unless
they'd be
they
able
were
to
on
do
your
that
server.
aspect. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I mean, you're not going to have everyone on your server, so
no,
I think it'd
especially
be
as it's
difficult to do it
merged as
that way.
well.
Right.
Yeah, I mean the other one that I thought quite strongly about was because when Belle goes to they go to Smuggler's Bay, don't they? They go Smuggler's Bay
Right.
to do some shopping. And she talks about sort of hating the smugglers because they ruffled her hair or some such. But um, the smugglers are supposed to be sort of a faction that you can sell unwanted merchant goods to. So that's another possibility, isn't it? I think
Yeah, definitely. I
to
can
have a group
definitely
of
see that being a
smugglers.
possibility.
Mm, yeah.
And then kind of we talked about it as well a little bit earlier, but the merfolk and mermaids, it kind of like goes into a little bit more depth about them. Basically,
Yeah.
as we know it right now in game, the merfolk and mermaids basically they just save our ships and or
Mm,
not save our ships, but save pirates that are in the water and bring them back to their ship. But it's kind of
yes.
said in the book that these are supposedly the like less intelligent merfolk out of the whole community,
That's
and
right.
basically it seems like they're just relegated to that role because that's all I can do.
That's right. I'd forgotten about that. Yes, it does say that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I just love how it talks about meeting places for mermaids, and that there are there are sort of conclaves of them, and you can hear them singing, and we can hear sort of voices or mermaid music already when you're sort of swimming about in the game in certain places. And I'm sort of really excited to see and hear more about the mermaids and what they get up to, why they're there, what their purpose is, what they're going to do. And Belle has this pair of earrings, doesn't she, that she discovered while she was doing a diving competition that her dad organised, I think. that enable her to go down and speak to the mermaids. I think a special set of earrings she found.
Yeah, I mean, she found the set of earrings that allows her to talk to them, so I
Mm,
think that could be potentially an in-game item at some point where maybe
mm.
we can actually talk to the mermaids more in depth, because we can talk to the NPCs right now, so maybe if you find these earrings or you purchase them, you can actually have a conversation with the merfolk.
Yes, yes. And because we've got these uncharted islands now, haven't we, with these sort of great underwater sort of tunnels and caverns and wrecks and little bits of temple sort of architecture. Um, that would be a sort of a good sort of mermaid zone, wouldn't it, as well? Or a place for, like you say, for finding these little bits of treasure that allow you to interact with the mermaids.
Yeah, definitely, and it kind of goes into detail when they talk about the Golden Sands portion of the story, and it tells that like there's little underwater meeting areas for these mermaids. So
Mm,
maybe like there's going to be ways in game that we can actually meet them underwater in these little, I guess, meeting areas or this specific island or something. So that's going to be
yes.
interesting too.
I mean, one place that sort of suggests that already, that you've got there's Mermaid's Hideaway, which
Right.
obviously mermaids straight away.
Definitely.
You've got the pond in the middle there, and if you swim down and underneath, there's a sort of a lot of chambers, um, and there's places where you can rise up, and there's a cave, and you can come out to the other side of the island. But it's full of corals and sea plants and little bits of flotsam, and then also on Sharkbait Cove, I think, because where the fish is in the centre of the island, there's a sort of tall column of rock in the water, and if you swim around that, you can hear sort of mermaid's song, I suppose you'd call it, but music of
Right.
singing, and that's got also access to the outer sort of sea through a channel, I think, that you can get to. But both of those would be fantastic places, wouldn't they, for encountering some sort of mermaid?
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, it sounds like that the Hungering Deep could potentially be mermaids. So maybe we'll be
Mm,
finding out about that really soon.
that's right, yeah. Yes, not long.
But I think this book definitely has a lot of content in there that you can kind of speculate on, and we'll have to see what they actually do with it. But I
Yeah.
think between the merfolk, between this cursed chest, between like how it talks about how the fairy was actually conceived, and maybe
Mm.
this twisted knife group. I mean, there's definitely so much content that could be coming. That's already teased in this book.
Yes, yes, exactly that. I mean, it's it's a fantastic handbook, isn't it? As an accompaniment to sort of playing the game. It doesn't go into too much depth. It tells you sort of just enough, but teases more, doesn't it, to come, I think.
I agree. And I did have one last passage to share before we actually end talking about the book, but this is a passage that I was kind of surprised to find when I read the book, and I was just reading along, and you were actually name dropped in this book. So,
Yes. Nobody was more surprised than me, I can assure
yeah.
you. Gobsmacked, I think, will be the word.
No, it's actually part of Captain Bell's journey. It's on day 7 of her journey, and basically it talks about their first shipwreck they found.
Hmm.
But I will kind of go into detail of what the passage says, so I'll just go into that. So the passage states, so that first wreck wasn't really a wreck after all. I mean, it was certainly a big mess, but we found out that it belonged to Captain Truewalker. After she found us going through her things and blowing the dust off it all, after putting her things on and working to clean the spots off useless pieces of paper with stones by the shore. They were her treasure maps or some big secrets, eh? We did get them clean, though. Probably the first time my dad ended up dropping by the Sea of the Damned. Yeah, he didn't even pretend to like it at that time. Him and your dad, no wait, your mum, right? Your dad said no. So they had to go down and explain everything to Truewalker. Like, oh yes, it was all a mistake, you see. Sorry, I'm just laughing here. It was all a mistake, Captain. Our daughters thought your ship was a wreck, you see. Our daughters did, and oops, dead. So that's very funny.
It's that. I mean it's brilliant. I mean, just to see my pirate name in type first of all in a book that's going to be published, but I couldn't have wanted anything more perfect, because it's I've got a shipwreck. I'm surrounded by maps, books, bits of paper, bits of lore. It's just brilliant. It's perfect.
And you sounded very angry that a couple of little girls touched your stuff.
And I would, yes, that's right. Especially we did get these things clean now, so scrubbed off my maps. But and shooting the guy, definitely do that. But no, it's
No,
just
I thought that would be interesting to read and share with the listeners in case you haven't found it yet. But it was definitely cool to see that.
very cool indeed. And all credit to the other members of the community who are also in the book as well. Their tales are told.
There's definitely a lot of drops everywhere. I mean, especially some of those pirate stories that are listed earlier, like you said. There's definitely some shout outs in there that community members have actually written. So
that's good.
But I think we pretty much covered the entirety of the book. I mean, do you have anything else you want to add about it?
I don't. No, I don't. I think we've sort of gone through it fairly thoroughly with a fine-tooth comb.
I think we have, so
covered most of the points, I think.
So that's pretty much all we have to say about the book. But if you haven't read it yet, definitely go out and read it. I mean, even though we went through it with a fine-tooth comb, I think it's definitely worth reading because you can kind of get a feel for the world more. Even if you play the game a lot, I think it's definitely worth a read.
Yeah, agree.
But if people want to find you or contact you and find out more about your story or background or talk to you more about the lore book, how can they do that?
I'm on the forums and I'm on Twitter as well. So just, drop me a PM, send me a message and I'll get back to you. I'm happy to answer anything. Quite welcome.
And as for me, if you want to contact me, you can either do so at our fairly new email, theblaisexperience@gmail.com, or you can find the podcast on Twitter at Blaise XPerience. And we also have a new Discord as well that will be in the show notes. If you want to listen to the podcast, then the way to do so is via Radio Public. Radio Public is a free app, and basically what it does is it helps podcasters and helps support them. It's available on iOS, Android, and it's available in all countries. It's also, of course, available on Apple Podcast and other podcast directories. So if you do listen on those, just give us some feedback, and leave a review. But those are the main ways to find us. I definitely want to thank you for coming on for this, KatTruewalker. I mean, it was definitely great to talk to you, and I think we had a great time talking about the Sea of Thieves lore book.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much for asking me. Loved it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, definitely thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it, and it's definitely been fun to talk to you, so maybe we can do it again sometime.
I hope so. Yeah, take care.
But thank you to you, the listener, as well for listening, and hopefully you enjoy this episode, and we will see you soon. So thank you.